June 1st, 1944. Near Nevers, central France. A cold mist clings to the railway embankment as a German armored train grinds through the valley, its wheels screeching over damp steel. Inside, Feldwebel Otto Kraus checks his pocket watch. 4:17. Dawn is coming. The cars behind him are loaded with fuel drums and PZK-PFW, 4 tanks bound for Normandy. The invasion hasn't come yet, but Berlin insists it will. Kraus sighs, tapping ash from his cigarette into an empty ration tin. Suddenly, the lead locomotive's headlight flickers, then vanishes. A low metallic clang echoes through the dark. A moment later, the ground beneath the train erupts. The front engine lifts clear off the rails in a blast of fire and soil. Kraus is thrown against the carriage wall as windows burst and steel twists. When the smoke clears, the entire convoy has derailed into the ravine below. What Kraus doesn't know is that hours earlier, in the woods beyond the tracks, a dozen French resistance fighters, members of the Forces Françaises de l'Union, the FFI, had crawled through the mud, carrying 2 homemade charges built from British plastic explosive and railway bolts. Their leader, a gaunt mechanic named René Valois, had whispered a single command, for France. Then they vanished back into the dark. By dawn, nothing moved on the line from Nevers to Bourges. 1 German armored train gone. No survivors. News of the ghost train spread across the French countryside faster than the Wehrmacht could repair the tracks. By June 5th, German transport officers were reporting mysterious sabotage from Brittany to Dijon. The resistance had struck again and again, paralyzing the lifelines that were supposed to feed Rommel's defenses along the channel. But this was no coincidence. It was part of something far bigger. The resistance had been preparing for this moment for years. 200 miles to the west, in the quiet town of Limoges, a young telegrapher named Jean Boucher listens to his radio in the cellar of a café. Static fills the air. Then, through the hiss, a man's voice recites a strange poem in French. Les sanglots longs de violons de l'automne. The long sobs of autumn's violins. Boucher freezes. It's the signal. The BBC's coded message from London. The final warning to the French resistance that the Allied invasion is imminent. He bolts up the stairs, whispering to the owner, "It's time." Within hours, resistance cells across occupied France receive the same words. They know what it means. Cut the railways, cut the power, cut the roads. Every line, every bridge, every train that can delay the German reinforcements heading north must be destroyed. In the forests of the Loire Valley, men and women of the Maquis, the rural guerrilla bands, gather around campfires, checking British Sten guns and American explosives dropped from RAF Lysander aircraft. A weathered courier unwraps a waterproof packet. Maps marked with red lines, railway targets from the Loire to the Rhone. At dawn, they move out. In Sologne, a 19-year-old named Marie Lefebvre leads a group of 5 saboteurs toward a steel bridge. They carry only a bicycle pump, wire cutters, and 2 blocks of P808 plastic explosive. When the German sentry turns his back, Marie slides down the embankment and plants the charge. The explosion rattles the valley. By noon, 22 bridges and over 800 meters of track are gone. Trains are stranded, locomotives abandoned, and German repair crews ambushed before they can reach the sites. Field Marshal Erwin Rommel, tasked with defending the Atlantic Wall, sends a furious message to Berlin. All rail movements delayed indefinitely. Enemy agents everywhere. Immediate action required. But there's no immediate action to take. The resistance has melted into the landscape. Shepherds, farmers, school teachers. No uniforms, no headquarters, only whispers and smoke. June 6, 1944. For 30 hours. Normandy. As the first Allied gliders scrape the hedgerows near Saint-Mire-Église, hundreds of miles away, a German Panzergrenadier division is waiting for a train that never comes. In Dijon, Hauptmann Weber studies the timetables. 3 trains carrying armor and fuel should have arrived last night from Nevers. Nothing. Reports say sabotage. Weber curses under his breath. Without those supplies, his men can't move to reinforce the coast. Outside the station, the tracks are twisted into ribbons. Locomotive wheels lie scattered like bones. Charred rails stretch toward the horizon. A few villagers stand nearby, pretending not to look. Weber draws his pistol, but there's no one left to arrest. The sabotage has been so complete that even the German railway authorities can't estimate how long repairs will take. Messages from Rommel's headquarters grow increasingly desperate. The Allies have landed in Normandy, and every hour counts. But the trains are gone, vanished into smoke and rumor. Later that day, an American intelligence officer named Captain Tom Gallagher of the OSS lands by glider near Corentin. In his pocket is a coded note from London. The railroads are silent. The French have done their part. Gallagher would later write in his report, "We were told to expect enemy reinforcements within hours. They never came." Somewhere in the heart of France, ordinary people had stopped the German war machine. The resistance's success wasn't luck. It was the result of months of preparation under the guidance of the British SOE, the Special Operations Executive, and the American OSS. Agents like Major Peter Churchill and Violette Sabo had spent 1943 training local maquisards in demolition, coded communication, and sabotage tactics. They taught them to target the vulnerable points, switch yards, signaling relays, and junction bridges, not just trains themselves. By spring 1944, the SOE's Plan Vert, Green Plan, was in motion, destroy every major railway linking central and southern France to Normandy. Between June 1st and June 15th, over 1,000 acts of sabotage crippled the French rail network. Entire divisions of the German 2nd SS Panzer Corps and 11th Panzer Division were trapped in southern France for nearly 2 weeks, unable to reach the front. In one now famous incident near Montluçon, the FFI derailed a train carrying 10 Tiger tanks by removing a single rail pin and placing a false signal lamp. The engineers slowed at the red light, right into an ambush. The explosion tore through the convoy, and by dawn the resistance had vanished, leaving nothing but smoking wreckage and slogans scrawled in chalk, "Vive la France libre." Allied bombers took advantage of the chaos, striking marshalling yards already disabled by resistance fighters. The Germans couldn't move, couldn't repair, couldn't retreat. The French countryside had become a vast, invisible battlefield. But heroism came at a terrible cost. The Gestapo and SS retaliated brutally. In Toul, 99 resistance fighters were hanged from lampposts. In Oradour-sur-Glane, 642 civilians, men, women, and children, were massacred by the 2nd SS Panzer Division Das Reich in retribution for sabotage along its route north. Entire villages were burned. The air stank of ash and fear. Still, the resistance didn't stop. They adapted, smaller groups, shorter strikes, faster disappearances. The Germans never knew when or where the next line would fall. By late June, the once proud German rail system in France had collapsed. Reports from the Wehrmacht's Transport Command listed irreparable damage across more than 500 miles of track. And yet, in London, General Eisenhower's staff could finally breathe easier. The greatest amphibious invasion in history, Operation Overlord, had succeeded not only because of the soldiers on the beaches, but because of the unseen war fought on French soil. Men and women without uniforms, without medals, had changed the outcome of the war. When American and British troops finally liberated France in August 1944, they were astonished at what they found. Entire German convoys still sitting idle beside shattered bridges, locomotives rusting on broken rails, freight cars left open and empty in the rain. In one town near Clermont-Ferrand, a U.S. infantry patrol discovered a line of abandoned tank cars stretching for miles, their fuel siphoned away by villagers months earlier. Locals called it the train that never moved. Captain Gallagher, the OSS officer, walked the tracks and shook his head. "They stopped an army with spanners and dynamite," he wrote. The Allies later estimated that the resistance's rail sabotage delayed German reinforcements to Normandy by at least 2 critical weeks, time enough for Allied beachheads to secure supply lines and push inland. By the time Paris was liberated in August, the resistance had emerged from the shadows. Flags unfurled, armbands reappeared, and the men and women who had fought in silence now stood in the open. But they didn't boast. Many had died unnamed, their graves unmarked, their stories forgotten in the ruins of bridges and tunnels. Still, every Allied soldier who rode into liberated France would remember what they'd heard whispered in the villages. They vanished whole trains, without ever being seen. And for those who knew what that meant, it wasn't just sabotage. It was victory, born in silence.